A tough one, to say the least. We are live in Studio B with your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. I'm Spencer Linton alongside Jarom Jordan. In so many ways, this is a winning Monday, except for with BYU football, who were not able to hold on to an 18-point halftime lead. That said, we bring in ESPN college football analyst and insider Trevor Matich to help us determine what the heck happened and maybe what BYU could have done differently there in the second half to hold on against Oklahoma State. Trevor, good to have you on the program. We'll start with that one. What do you make of the second half specifically, and where could BYU have made an adjustment to win that game and be bowl eligible?
The biggest adjustment, I think, was just execute. I mean, they executed in the first half. In the second half, they didn't. And part of it was because Oklahoma State made some adjustments, especially on defense, but there's only 11 guys on defense. Somewhere they're going to have a conflict. Somewhere they're going to be weak. You have to find that spot and hit it. And so there's a lot being said about how BYU threw the ball on first down so much in the second half, and it was incomplete so often and things like that, and they should have run it. Okay, you can make a case that with a big, strong offensive line, there are plays you can run when the defense stacks the line. And a lot of those are counters and powers and things like that when you're pulling people around and creating a convoy through the point of attack. But at the same time, if the defense comes up to stop the run, and BYU ran the ball really well in the first half, then they should be weaker in the secondary. And so when you're running RPOs and things like that, the read takes the quarterback to a pass. The play caller will be thinking, okay, you're up to stuff the run. We're going to take advantage behind all those guys that are up to stuff the run. And at that point, you just have to execute. From a defensive standpoint, it comes down to doing your job. I mean, the defense for most of the game was absolutely fantastic. You expected them to wear down in the second half, but you expect them to not miss assignments and have the reason that they get beat on certain plays be that the other side is really good, which Oklahoma State is, especially at running back. And the blockers for Oklahoma State are really good. That offensive line for the Cowboys is very underappreciated on a national basis. But at the same time, make them block you out of the hole. Don't just leave it. And BYU did that a number of times.
It was pretty wild that Ollie Gordon, the second, runs for 4.9 yards per carry, and we're like, hey, that was pretty good. Monster game, 34 for 166, 5 touchdowns. But defensively, BYU did great work in the first half, getting 10 points off turnovers, a pick 6 there. The offense also turns it over 2 times eventually, obviously one in overtime, double overtime that it cost BYU. But turnovers almost got BYU an opportunity in this one, but blowing an 18-point lead is really sour to end the season because a bowl game was on the line and Oklahoma State had a lot to play for. But how would you kind of summarize the opportunity that BYU had the last 2 weeks, frankly, against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and unfortunately didn't come up with one of those ranked wins?
Well, you're right about the competitiveness the last couple of weeks. I mean, both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State weren't playing BYU in a position where it didn't really matter that much if they won or lost. They played BYU knowing that they had to win to stay alive for the Big 12 championship race. And BYU had Oklahoma right there in the palm of their hand, and they kind of turnovered it away. And with Oklahoma State, they had them. And then in the second half, they let it get away. What that tells you is that BYU is competitive and they need to fix a few mistakes. And if they fix those mistakes, they can stay competitive. Now, this, you talk about that second half and the defense. I want to be very careful to not make it seem like I'm being critical of the defense. They were magnificent for pretty much the entire game. But down the stretch, when guys started to wear down, guys started to try to do too much to compensate for that, and that was a problem. The last 3 touchdowns that Ollie Gordon II scored were because somebody left contained. They just left it. Once it was front side contained, once it was backside contained. It's not that they got blocked out of the way. It's just they decided to come inside because the ball seemed to be going there, and they wanted to help inside, and Ollie just jogged around the edge and scored 3 times between that final touchdown and then an overtime in regulation. So this is where you look at the execution. BYU was there. They were there in both of these games. But turnovers in key moments, lack of execution in key moments, and they lost their opportunity. Remember how BYU has to win. They have to win by being cleaner than the other side. And they weren't in either of the last 2 games, and they still were in position to win.
And I think that's probably the most frustrating part for BYU fans is just being right there. And the margin of error between BYU being 7-5 and 5-7 or even 6-6 is just so ultra thin. So with that said, Trevor, how does BYU build off of year one in the Big 12? And maybe in your opinion, what is item number one on the offseason agenda list?
Well, item number one, beyond recruiting, is focusing on the things that cost you the games. We always talk about how more games are lost than they are won. And BYU, too many times this season, turned it over even early in the first couple of plays of a game, even that turned into defensive scores in the first couple of plays of a game. And they did it again against Oklahoma State, fumbled the ball on play 2. And so these are things that they need to take care of. I would love to see a program instituted where if somebody fumbles the ball in a game, all the next week they have to carry a football around campus. And everywhere they go, except for when they enter a classroom, they have to hold that ball high and tight and squeeze it as if it's being ripped out. And then every once in a while, hey, if a student comes over and tries to hit the ball, you hit the ball. You know, don't hit the player, don't grab his arm, but have him just poke at the ball every once in a while, right? I would love to see that happen because this goes down to guys trying to make a play. When you're running with the ball and you see an opportunity and you try to just hit that opportunity as fast as you can, very often the ball comes away from your body a little bit to give you a little bit of extra balance as you're trying to burst or as you're trying to drive through a hole. And when that ball comes away from your body just a little bit is when it gets punched out. So it needs to be a better habit. So we start there. And the second thing is, once again, it's assignments. Do your job, trust your teammates, understand that you can't just leave your job too early to help somebody else because that hurt BYU at key times, especially on defense all through the season, certainly the second half of the season. And then the offensive line's got to get a whole lot more effective. They're going to lose some real talent. You know, Kingsley going off to the NFL, I assume, and others. They're going to lose talent. But the offensive line, even if it has less talent next year, can be a whole lot more effective. And so they need to get that shored up because this season should have been one where the offensive line put the team on its shoulders and carried it. And that means helping the defense as well. That means the O-line saying, look, our defense is kind of thin. We've had a lot of injuries, especially up front, and then at safety as well. We as an O-line need to make sure we pile drive the opponent, we keep the ball, we get time of possession, we string out long drives to help our defense, and those things were extraordinarily rare this year, even though they should have been much, much more common than they were. So that's something that needs to be settled in. The good news about all this is that it's all very cut and dry. There is no mystery as to what needs to happen here. The biggest mystery, I think, is, well, not mystery, but they need to figure out how to get stronger and stay healthier. And so I think there needs to be a reflection on how the strength and conditioning program is run. I'm not saying anything's being done improperly there at all. I have no idea what they're doing with strength and conditioning. I can say that sometimes you do too little or you do too much. And either way, it can lead to more soft tissue injuries than you should be having. So there needs to be an evaluation there just to make sure that everything is happening the best way. These things that I'm telling you are not mysteries. These things that I'm telling you are absolutely clear what the coaches need to do and what the players need to do in order to get better. And right now begins the team of 2024. And they need to start working on those things immediately.
Jake Retzlaff started the last 4 games. BYU goes 0-4, but those were tough games. You're playing the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place teams in the Big 12. Those are all good teams. Did he show you enough to feel like he's the guy going into the offseason? And or does BYU need to bring in a transfer to compete with him for the starting job with the other quarterbacks already in the room?
BYU needs to bring in as many people as they can to compete with every position on the field. Competition is critical for a couple of reasons. One is it creates more depth, but also it creates a better scenario with the starters because the starters know that if they don't compete correctly in practice, they might lose their job. They might lose some playing time to the guy behind them who's also very, very good. The danger you have is if you've got a position where you've got one really good starter and nobody behind him, that starter is not being pushed in practice, and that has the potential to lead to problems. So Jake did a lot of good things. I am not saying that he did poorly. I'm not pointing a finger at him at all. I am saying that they need to bring in as much talent as they have. They need to develop the current talent they have in that quarterback room to have a ferocious competition at that position. That will also be an example for the rest of the positions, because a lot of people would think that Jake kind of should be the guy. He had those starts. He came close to beating Oklahoma and Oklahoma State down the stretch. Okay, good. He's got the experience. Let's move forward with Jake. They may decide that. But if they decide to throw open the competition, then it'll show the rest of the team what Jake, if he wins it, is made of. Or it'll show the rest of the team that every position is open to competition, and Coach Satake will make sure that every position is populated with the best player that'll help the team win the most. And he owes that to the rest of the program. So there are a lot of things that Jake can improve on. I mean, a lot of things. But at the same time, I think he deserves a lot of credit for going in and competing the way he did.
Trevor, it's great to talk to you. We'll finish with this. If you had to define this season, the first one in the Big 12 for BYU, in a couple of words, which words would you choose?
Disappointing, encouraging. It was disappointing that they lost the last 5 games. It was disappointing that they won some of the games the way they did early in the season. But the last 2 games, I think, were incredibly encouraging. Playing Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and being right there with the ability to win those games, but for mistakes that BYU itself made. I think that's incredibly encouraging, because there's a lot of conversation about how it takes a long time. It takes many years to get ready to compete when you move up from Group of 5 to Power 5 level, essentially. BYU showed in these last 2 games that they're a whole lot closer, and maybe even ready now to compete at the highest level of this conference, as long as they clean up some of the mistakes that they're making. So there are no moral victories. The team would not want to be heard saying anything like that or believing it. But as an analyst and as a fan and as a person that went to BYU and played there, I am encouraged by these last 2 weeks, because I can see the path to competitiveness at a high level in the Big 12.
Trevor, we always appreciate the insights and are grateful for your time with us. And I know our fan base really looks forward to Matich Mondays. No disappointment once again today. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, guys.